So did you guys get a chance to check out Anthem, everybody?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
The early access PC version has been out for about a week now, right?
Coming up in a week.
Came out last
Yeah,
Friday.
a week. Yep.
The general release is this
Been like
Friday. We got the
2 hours, an hour. And a
day
half?
one.
Yeah, it's soon,
patch.
tomorrow.
Yeah, in like 2 hours. I
2
think.
hours. Yeah, 2 hours tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. We got the day one patch, which improved a lot of things, especially loading screens on older PCs and some of the crashes and some of the bugs. It's been a rocky launch for Anthem, that's for sure. Some pretty rough reviews coming up on sites. I do wonder if it was wise to release the game to anybody, frankly, in the state it was in before that patch came out.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the thing, right? They had a day one patch that didn't come out on the day one that they actually released it to paying customers.
Right.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
whole release
This
is
is
a
a bit-
debacle.
Wee bit weird.
Not
Yeah.
a good. It wasn't a good
Yeah.
strategy.
I feel like
And they knew it. That's why they released the day one patch earlier
True.
for the anyone who was on Origin Early Access got the patch
Yesterday.
like yesterday at 4
Yesterday,
p.m.
yeah.
5 or 6 p.m. Yeah, they knew.
Mhm.
Yeah, they did a very weird live stream where they announced that they're going to
I mean,
let the patch go in about 4 hours.
hey, if you're winning, you're winning.
Yes. So let's dig in. Let's dig into Anthem. Like,
All
All
right.
right.
let's start with story. What'd you guys think?
I like this story.
I like the
enjoyed
story too. It broke up gameplay in a very odd way.
It
And
did.
sometimes I didn't want to be doing the story. I just wanted to be playing Anthem.
Mhm.
Yep.
I did like the story overall. There were some weak points. The monitor was kind of, I don't know. Like I have no idea what his
Just a guy.
motivations were. Like
Just some
he
evil
was just
guy.
a bad guy,
Just
right?
some evil
The bad
guy.
guy doing bad things to just be a guy.
Yeah, but he's
Yeah,
also
but-
a businessman. He's just trying to pay people off, being like, "Listen, I'll make you an offer." He's like the Godfather in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And like the voice acting was good overall. I did have a problem. Did anybody else choose the male voice actor?
No.
I did.
So the male voice actor, I'm pretty sure I've listened to audiobooks with this guy reading them because God damn, it sounded so familiar. And it just, the whole time I'm thinking, it sounds like he's reading me an audiobook.
Oh, he was also Noctis.
oh,
Apparently.
Oh.
Not
what I
just
was
from
told.
what?
I
I'm
could
not
be
familiar
wrong.
with that.
Final Fantasy.
But he could be he's Noctis in Final Fantasy 15.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you played that game, then you know.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Anthem for the story, because there was a lot of people saying like it had no story, and I was like, what? There is definitely a story in there. Is it a BioWare level Mass Effect story? No. It's a story that's not good or bad, in my opinion. It's like a backdrop. It reminds me a lot of Destiny 1's story, but honestly, I think Destiny 1's launch vanilla story was worse because it was extremely vague in terms of all the things that were going on. This at least
It didn't
It
make
was
any
a story
sense.
that you had to read that was in a book that was on a website that you didn't know about unless you went
Exactly.
looking for it.
Exactly.
Well, the story that was in Destiny's game didn't actually make sense. Like it didn't. There was no linear thread.
Yeah.
Like through it that like made any like real sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So at least there was like a conclusion and some character development, and the characters I thought were actually very interesting, and the voice acting was good. But I definitely agree. Like every time I went back, there was like a bunch of bubbles to talk to, people that wanted to have story discussion with me, and I'm like, I want to go blow stuff up, but I don't want to miss out on this stuff. And so I forced myself to talk to everybody, and it definitely broke up the gameplay when going through the story like that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
As far as my interaction with the story, I tried because of all the loading screens, I ended up getting caught in a load screen while loading. So I just missed a big cinematic part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a bug.
There's a scene with the monitor, like the first time he's basically introduced.
Really?
And then there's like another thing that pops up, and you find someone's body, and I'm like, oh, how did she die? And then Watts is like, did you not see the cutscene? Like, no, there was a cutscene. I thought that was a loading screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I still haven't progressed past the point of the story in quotation marks, where you have to go story your way into some tombs.
The tomb
Yeah.
mission. Made a lot of waves.
So okay. So the story, I generally enjoyed it. I think that mission where you have to do the tombs and do a bunch of random stuff, I think that did break up the flow of the story because you're like, oh, story, learn about the world, sweet, nice and cool. And then you're like, okay, now I have to take a break for 3 hours and go do this stuff where I'm not really learning any more story. So I do think that it was a weird place to put such a big break in the story. But I think that the voice acting is really good. I think that I've really enjoyed the voice acting and the story and the final fight I enjoyed as well.
Final fight was a pain in the ass solo on hard.
I bet it was.
I can imagine.
Why would you do that to yourself?
This is what I do with all games. I always play it solo and typically on the hardest unless it's some insane difficulty like God of War. Because I like the challenge. I also like to feel like I feel like I learned things from the combat doing that. But that last battle was a pain in the ass to do solo.
That dude's got like 2 billion health.
Yeah, I know.
He does.
To mention something else about the tombs is it was a little weird that there's nothing in them.
Why did I have to go to a loading screen to get nothing?
Here's a room with like a tomb thing. I expected, something like maybe there's a goon in there that I fight after I get in, or maybe there's. I was surprised. I didn't realize that I had that expectation, but because it took so long to get in those tombs, I did expect something.
So,
like the quest itself, I would expect to see a quest like that in the game somewhere.
Yeah.
Where it was placed at the end of it, when they want to say, "Okay, you've played through the story. Let me introduce you to this like free play activity." And, maybe there's like your first masterwork is your reward for completing this, right? But having it where it was and be the length it was, they are making changes to it. They made changes to it in the
already,
air quotes day one patch where, you start making progress to that quest before you even get to that quest to hopefully speed players through that part.
That was going on before because
I
was already making progress when I got to that too. But like
that doesn't help me.
The main thing that was going on is that you had to actually pop the chest. You had to be the one that held the button to pop the chest to have
that was weird.
Yeah, so they changed that to where if you're within range of the chest, it counts for everybody in your group. Which
I must be a greedy motherfucker because like I had like 10 of those things popped already.
That was definitely
just running at those chests.
I was wondering why mine was at 1 after we'd been playing for like 4 hours, and it was because Watts got every single chest.
I know where the loot is, man. Gotta go get the loot.
It's hilarious.
A loot sniffer.
Yeah, that quest in the middle of the story was definitely misplaced, or at least they should have shortened it because like once you get into the tombs, it gives you some codex information, but I'm not going to go and read codex. Like
Well, yeah, I felt like that would have been a perfect time for another cutscene. Learn about the people who died, maybe like some dialogue.
Yeah, for sure.
That would have been really
were
cool.
good in general.
I was really excited about the tombs actually because it's like these legionnaires and these legendary fighters or whatever, and to learn more about them, I was super excited about the tomb part, and then I didn't actually end up seeing their legacy. I could read about it, but I didn't get to see it.
Yeah, so this is again correlates heavily to how D1 was set up, where there's all this amazing lore and amazing world that they built in D1, yet very little of it was actually in the game. At least in Anthem, there's a codex that you can go to and actually read the stuff and not have to go to a website. But still, it's like...
And it pops up on your screen when you find it, so you can actually read it when you find it.
Yeah, exactly. So at least they did that step of it, but it is very reminiscent of like, look at this awesome world that they built with all this lore, and the story is just kind of given like a fraction and like forgetting about cool things like that, like having a cutscene about those heroes that these tombs are built around.
This game is going to be forever tied to Destiny for me because of how similar it feels. It not in the gameplay, but in the playing experience to playing Destiny 1. Because ultimately, I'm very much in love with playing Anthem. The act of flying around, shooting stuff, and getting loot is very cool and very good. I really like it. But the other stuff that surrounds it needs a lot of work.
Yeah,
that's fair.
It's really interesting, the correlations on there, and I agree as well. I'm like having a fantastic time playing it. I've got like 40-50 hours into it, and I'm making endgame builds, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm very aware of its flaws and the issues and the technical issues. It's been huge technical issues with the game. Lots of people like can barely play it because of system setups on PC and all that. Hopefully consoles don't have those type of things, but you know, it's a launch title and it's probably going to have issues on console as well. But the times that I've been looting and shooting, I know that's a coined term that gets overused a lot, but it is, you shoot and you loot, you fire and acquire in the game, and you make builds. And I feel like a lot of people going into it,
Stabby and grabby.
yeah, stabby, grabby. Exactly.
I'm definitely stabby grabby.
That whole thread this morning made me laugh.
Yeah,
That was
pretty funny.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Like I really do deeply apologize if any devs hate that term, but like
Make a better
get
term.
over it.
Right?
Like it's gonna be. That's what everyone's gonna call it.
Yeah.
Like everyone
That's
calls
what
it.
you're
Like,
doing, right?
like
Shooting
everyone-
dudes and looting dudes.
like everybody calls me Broman, right? But if I was like, no, you call me Professor Broman. Yeah, everyone would be like, whatever, Broman.
It's hilarious.
Like people are like everyone's gonna call it a looter shooter because that's just the
Exactly.
simplest way to break down the core mechanics of the game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it's like
Why are you calling it a
Luke
battle
Smith.
royale? There's nothing royal about it.
You're right, Holtz. Now I'm pissed.
And all battle royales are called battle royales because of the movie that
The
they're
movie,
like based on, which is a bunch of kids on an island that have to kill each other to escape. Wholesome.
That's pretty good, actually.
Wow. I've been enjoying it personally, but I'm also a fan of builds. I'm a fan of Diablo. If you ever made a build in Diablo to do endgame content,
Yeah.
like that is what this scratches really well, along with also having shooting mechanics and abilities and flying around and Michael Bay explosions every second, which is fun.
Yeah,
to
Very
me.
Michael Bay.
It's
I'm currently enjoying it for sure. I'm enjoying like there's some guns that I think are giving me a headache because they're flashing in my face constantly. But I fear or I feel like when I get to the point where I have the legendary gear and all that stuff, what am I actually gonna do with those builds that I've made? I'm waiting to see the stuff that I'm gonna do.
Right.
So-
Right now, it's a
Stuff
little
that I
late
got.
on actual endgame content. There's
That.
there's GMs. You know, there's like you can play the same content that's in there that you've already played at harder difficulty levels. So as you optimize your build, you'll kind of see your
But I want
development
unique
get
stuff
harder and
from
harder.
that. I want
Yeah.
like
I
think- I think
GM3
for that
Stronghold
stuff-
loot.
I think for that stuff, you're gonna have to. Oh, you want better stuff from the GM too.
The
GM3.
fact that so my assumption going into the game was I'm gonna play through the story, probably on normal or hard, depending on the quality of my team. And when I finish that, I'll grind hard for a little bit, and then I'll play Grandmaster. I'll get my Grandmaster 1 build, and it'll be awesome. And then finally, after I have that, I'll be able to go do Grandmaster 2 stuff where there's new things that I haven't gotten yet. And then after I compete that, then I go do Grandmaster 3 where there's new things I haven't gotten yet. But as it stands right now, every single thing in the Grandmaster loot table is available at GM1. And once you're able to just absolutely trounce GM1, you're not incentivized to go further up the chain because the speed at which you pound through activities once you're skilled up is so great that it doesn't make sense to do anything on other difficulties. And I think that's a huge misstep.
Well, actually,
That
I
is. Well,
think
just
they
the-
adjusted that though in the patch because, like, right now,
So
strongholds
the
are.
one thing that they changed is that in strongholds, you can now get 1 masterwork guaranteed for killing a boss on GM1, and then 2 for 2 and 3 for 3.
Right.
I don't think that is enough.
Isn't the same for
No, they
legendary
should
contracts
be
too?
better.
And then legendary, and like there's some changes, but like I agree completely with Watts. Like it's just not enough. Like there needs to be a reason. Like why do I go do GM3 Heart of Rage?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I get out of that? What do I get out of doing Grandmaster 3 free play? Like what do I get out of that that's different than doing it on Grandmaster 1? Like there needs to be, you know, Grandmaster level specific loot, and there needs to be incredibly unique loot at the end of those stronghold bosses to encourage people to engage with those activities,
Mhm.
because without it, it's kind of like, why am I playing this?
Okay, so I want to pitch an alternate view on that.
Sure.
Why did we play Monster Hunter World?
Because I like big fucking swords.
Because there's always a
'Cause-
bigger
and
boss
anime
to
girls
kill.
and
But
cats.
there's a
That's true.
cap to the bigger boss. And once you farm the bigger bosses and you made the builds, why did you make the builds?
Well, I walked away after I killed the biggest bosses
Okay.
and waited for them to release G rank or the pickle or the arc tempered, whatever the F's.
Right.
Because
So my point on
know.
that is that a lot of people like to make the builds so they can apply that to the same content. It's like why do we raid to get gear to then go do the raid again even better? You know what I mean?
there is in my opinion, there is just a difference in those loops, like the diversity present inside of the Monster Hunter universe, the diversity of approach that you can bring into a raid, which still isn't that great, but like once you find one build that just absolutely dunks on Grandmaster 1 for whatever your favorite javelin is, I don't even feel incentivized to make other builds. Like in Monster Hunter, after I was like, oh man, well, this has been fun. I wonder how this fight would feel with this. I'm using a hammer. I wonder what this feels like with dual blades. And the fight completely changes. And I think that there is not enough of that feeling in Anthem right now.
Well, I got to say, I'm definitely incentivized to try the other javelins because
Sure.
Yeah.
at this point, when I go into
I've played all of them.
DM1,
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, when I load in and I'm playing, especially if I'm playing with a match made group that I don't know, I'm really hoping to see one of each javelin type, because I truly believe maybe the interceptor is a little weak on this, but I have seen an interceptor that can do 100k damage with a sniper rifle because of the link between they have an ability where they can reload after dodging 3 times, and then also up the damage of the explosion on the sniper rifle that has the explosive damage. So that they could do 100k damage with a sniper rifle, which I don't think is why they exist, but like I want to see a ranger there to give the whole team a big damage buff. I want to see a Goliath there. I want to see everybody there because everybody has a role, and I like that about this a lot. So like that's part of the diversity to me, is just the different javelins too, besides the build.
For me, like in Monster Hunter, like the difference, it wasn't always like, oh, there's builds that I can do. It was the accessibility of those builds. Like basically all I had to do is make the new weapon, and you could, boom, you're basically 75% of the way there, and you can probably hodgepodge something else together. That's why I liked trying new stuff in Monster Hunter. It's just I could easily toss something else on. With Anthem, like you got to go all the way through the story first. Changing up is a little bit.
You had to do that in
difficult
Monster Hunter World though. Go through the story first.
What, to make a new weapon?
No, to go through like an endgame build.
Oh yeah, to make an in-game build, but like halfway through or whenever, it was just easier to make a new weapon than it was in Anthem, which is just like gated off at certain levels unless you had the bug and unlocked all of them.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. A different kit of a character.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my one other concern would be like the Tempest Strike, for example, right? The white Tempest Strike that I get is the same as the purple Tempest Strike that I get. It just has some more stats on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's very little loot in the game besides like the legendary stuff and all that actually changes the way that you play with a gun or.
I think they should have
ability.
skipped the epic altogether and had you start earning masterworks by the end of the campaign to introduce players to that.
Yeah.
Because once you enter the masterwork system, it does start to introduce you into, more unique weapons. They're still the same weapon, but the stats and the bonuses on them are so different than what you've been playing with through the the common, uncommon, rare, epic. Like all 4 of those levels feel like exactly the same gun until you get into the Masterwork set.
Mm-hmm.
So if they had started introducing Masterworks in the actual campaign, I think that would have been wise.
Yeah.
That's when the
You can
fun
get
loot
6 of
comes
them.
in, right?
You can get six Masterworks in hard though. That can drop, I think, after level 20. So there is a chance.
Yeah, I didn't get any though in the campaign. I don't know. Maybe some people have. I didn't get any in the campaign.
Yeah, I got some before. I think. Well, did I hit it before I killed Oh no, I was level 17. My bad. Before I hit 30 though, I got a couple of masterworks on there. Yeah.
And that's when the fun loot happens, right? Because when you're playing, you're
Yeah.
like, oh well, this blue thing is like the same as this green thing.
Yeah.
I
Right, it
really
does
hope I could have some of that like
15 extra damage.
super fun loot that I'm seeing all these people have all this fun loot. I wish I could have just a tiny taste of that. You know, just like
Yeah, very little
early
that
on,
is
'cause
in the beginning. I do agree in that, yeah.
it feels like you have to get through the beginning part of the game to experience any of the exciting loot drops. Because you know when you're playing Destiny, right? You are through the early game, you're excited for every blue that drops because
Mhm.
it's going to be an increase to your level. You're going to be more powerful. Game's going to be a little bit easier for you. And then you start hunting for perfect rolls and exotics and stuff like that. Whereas in Anthem, it's I'm waiting to get to that point where I get loot that I'm excited when it drops.
Yeah, I kind of fell into a hole of like always using the same abilities, even though I was getting other abilities, but I was really effective with like freezing and then casting in a lightning bolt. So I was like, why was I going to change it because it was so good in those early stages? So I didn't experiment with the other stuff. But then once I started getting masterworks and legendaries of other stuff, I started experimenting with builds. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing to be able to switch it up with this stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
Start
the
playing
fun
with
part of
builds.
Anthem.
Like the builds are really exciting.
They are, yeah.
I think. You know, like when I start looking at, okay, if I equip this, then I get more armor. Plus, all of a sudden, my primary weapon is doing, you know, like 100% more damage. Oh my God. And then, this primary weapon does, every time I fire it, it's got a 33% chance of doing this like huge electrical burst of damage, which means that it's really good against shields. That means that now I can focus like my special abilities on taking down health instead of shields. Like that stuff is really cool.
Yeah. The build complexity,
sure.
in my opinion, is incredible in Anthem. And I partially agree and I disagree at the same time of the things that you can do with those builds right now, because I think it is very similar to, say, Monster Hunter World, where I feel like you can put in a solid 100, maybe 200 hours if you make builds. If you're not interested in making builds, which is the reason to play Endgame in these games, then it's like 30 hours of content because you hit level 30 and that's it. You're not interested in really like making builds for the different characters. And that's fair. Not everybody plays Diablo. Not everybody plays Monster Hunter World. Not everybody's interested in theory crafting a build that's going to make you hit some insane number ultimately at some point. But for the people who are interested in that, it's extremely satisfying.
I've stayed kind of quiet because I feel like I don't know, just I put in 8 hours day one and was not having it by the end of the day, which funny enough, that's basically exactly what happened with Monster Hunter World. This one feels different to me though. Just like, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff about the game that I have a lot of issues with, and I think that no matter the amount of like fixes that they can do to the game, like with the day one patch, they are addressing like load times. Like that is one of my big concerns, but I don't think a patch could really fix how I'm not engaged with the story and don't really have any interest in the characters.
No, if you don't like the gameplay, then the game's not for you.
Right?
Yeah,
it's not for you.
The overall gameplay, I just think is not for me. When I see enemies that just stand there and tank all your damage, and then
that's exactly how I felt about the Division. I went into the Division hugely excited about it, didn't like the gameplay, bounced off. I liked everything about the Division except for playing it.
Yeah. You tell me about this game on paper. Great. I love it's so odd. Like Apex Legends is a BR. I fucking hate BRs. But dear God, I love Apex Legends. Looter shooters. Game, like a game where you go get loot, make builds, grind. I love those games. Holy God, I cannot stand Anthem. It's this,
is that because we might have been saying that you were going to love it at some point, Holtz? Is this really what's going on? You've dug your heels in.
I still don't love it, and I feel like I am not alone in many of the things that I have said.
The game absolutely has problems, no doubt about it. Some
of the problems too, like they don't seem to have learned from like the last 4 years of these types of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you know, we're going into Division 2. We've already got Destiny 2. We've had 2 Borderlands games. Warframe has been out there for a long time. Like, there's some of these lessons have already been learned. Like, when I first realized that you don't get your loot until you go back to Fort Tarsis, and you can't change your equipment out in the field, I was like, well, we already knew that was a bad idea. We've learned this lesson before,
Right?
right?
It's a looter shooter stabby, whatever the thing
Stabby
was.
grabby.
Fire acquire game that I can't get It's the problem that Destiny 2 had. Every single piece of loot that you got, aside from like the raid, was acquired from the Cryptarch or like, you know, putting tokens into the system. There was you didn't have that moment happen. Now it's the exact same, or in Anthem, it's the exact same thing where the only time you're seeing the new loot is on like the end screen. Yeah, you get to pick up loot. You have no idea what the hell you got though. You don't know which epic it was where you got it. You just know that it's on the end screen and they unceremoniously just show up there with the loot acquired at the end.
Yeah, I'd really like to see them change that.
Yeah.
I'd really like to see it.
I feel like that issue of you not being able to equip stuff is like more of a technical issue, which is why like you have to go back to the base. And I saw people say, well, if you let people equip stuff, they would just leave once they get what they want. It's like, well, the only reason people would leave when they get the thing that they want is because of the technical limitation of being able to. Okay, anyway, yeah, I've lost my train of thought. You guys go continue conversation about whatever. I'm tired as fuck.
So there's things that are going to change in the game coming in March, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So
there was one that I'm really excited about, actually.
What's that?
Is the vanity chest coming to Strongholds.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that they're going to do that is you basically do a daily challenge and you get a key. And then you can take that key, go to the end of the stronghold. You have to actually kill the boss guys. And then you can open one of those chests and get a vanity item. They said there's going to be around 100 vanity items for you to get. But also something really cool is, say that 4 of us go in together and we all have a key. We all get to open up a vanity chest and we get that loot from each other.
Awesome.
So this is going to be specific loot from the stronghold, which is what I want more of, right? I want a reason to go and do that hard mode stronghold because I want to get cool, unique stuff from it.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And that's absolutely some of the stuff they need to add to the game, which is coming already. But I also, I want to point out that I think as a platform, from what they've begun with, I think this is a great starting point for a live service game. What they've launched with that stuff. And then the ability to add things, like let's say they make a GM4 and then they expand the loot pool for GM4 with that. Like, from what I've heard from the devs and how they've talked about how they can work with the engine, those are the things that they're thinking. They can easily add more GMs. They can expand the game with the way they have access to the engine. Like, there was an issue with those drop tables with the chests in free play, and they were able to change that server side really quick because of the way that the architecture is in the game. So I think as a platform, great starting point. If they make awesome changes and are quick with it, and if March really pays out for the type of changes or the type of things that they're adding to the game, I think the future for the game is very bright. Besides of all the negativity that's been on YouTube and everything.
Bro, man, I saw you playing a lot of Anthem.
Yeah, I've got about 50 hours into it.
That's a lot. What's your overall feeling of it?
I think that it's a really, really fun game that needed more dev time. I feel like it's going to be in a really interesting place in like 6 months or a year. But at the same time, the gaming community's had that song and dance happen a lot. The faith isn't necessarily there for everyone to, go on that ride again. I think that, when I play the demo, I absolutely adore the gameplay. Like, it's like the ultimate like Mass Effect 3 combo system, power fantasy, open world, fly around and blow shit up experience I kind of always wanted. The problem is that I feel like that the end game other than acquiring loot, feels directionless. And that's my core issue, is that I love everything else about it. I even loved its story and the weird characters and like the world that it's in. I'm super intrigued by all of that, but the end game feels like it doesn't like it's not pointing me anywhere. Like, you know, with Borderlands 2, like it's pointing you towards like, okay, like now it's True Vault Hunter mode, now it's OP1 and OP3 and whatever, and in Warframe it's like get ready for sorties and, you know, high round stuff. In Destiny it's get ready for raids or get ready for trials, and in Anthem I don't feel like there's a get ready for, which sucks because I want to be getting ready for something. But I feel like, you know, after you have a full set of masterwork gear with moderately powerful perks that you want on, let's say you're really generous and you want to do that on every single one of your javelins. You know, some of the guys I play with already have that done. I don't have the best luck. So like we'll take my garbage luck in 50 hours of time and say that it takes you 200 hours to make that happen for all 4 of your javelins. Then what do you do? And that's
then you wait for DLC.
Yeah.
Then you wait for DLC. Exactly.
Yep.
And you know what? That's an absolutely, because the DLC is free, that's an absolutely fine way to approach things. I think that unfortunately, and this is what frustrates me so much, is that this type of game is something that every developer, I feel like, has taken a stab at and nobody has nailed it. Like and I think that everyone is just getting their hopes up again and again. Like, well, since like I would say Borderlands 2 nailed it.
I was getting ready to say like Borderlands 2.
Universally adored and lauded as like an absolutely perfect experience for this genre. And so since that game has come out, everyone has been waiting for the evolution of that. I want Borderlands 2, but in a massively online world. And maybe that's what Borderlands 3 is going to be. Like, maybe that's where they're shooting. And they definitely hinted at that at the end of Borderlands 2, where they're like, oh, look at all these other vaults and stuff. And like, maybe we all just had to fucking wait. But I think that everyone wants to see that concept iterated over different games and different genres and different storytelling types, and in third person and in first person and all this other stuff. And I think everyone had their hopes up for Anthem to kind of deliver on that, because it seems like it has it's like a deconstructed soup. Like, it's all there. But you just like, I really wish that it was in the pot and cooked and finished before we got our first crack at it.
Yeah. This feels like it came in really hot, like real hot.
With all the bugs. Good Lord. Yeah. They obviously had to get it out.
I mean, like, if you watch, like, I have my like story playthrough on YouTube, and I was experiencing like the worst loading bugs in the history of ever. It was fucking wretched. But I went through it because I really, really enjoyed the experience of playing it for the 20 minutes out of every hour I got to play. Now, thankfully, that's been fixed, but it still doesn't change the fact that I really do adore the game, but the fact that I don't feel like I have a direction bothers me a lot.
My biggest concern moving forward is the fact that EA is publishing this game, and like, I just don't know that they're going to be willing to, you know, do something like what Ubisoft does. And like, maybe we didn't have the best launch, but we're going to continue to support this game. We're going to make it great over time, like they did with The Division, with For Honor, with you know, so many other games. There's so many examples of like, you know, sticking with a game, really improving it, giving it that Taken King moment. I just, like, is EA going to allow that to happen, or are they going to pull the plug if the thing doesn't sell like gangbusters right off the gate?
Yeah, there's a big mystery, honestly.
That's something. I mean, that's, you know, unfortunately with the climate currently among developers and studios, with all of these layoffs, people are already saying like, what if this studio gets shut down? And some people are even saying we should expect it. And I think that we all, as people who love games, should really just love or hate the game. I feel like this is a really unique situation because this is a publisher who has 2 big franchises out right now, one of which is a free-to-play BR that is crushing it. Like, it has moved their stock price 15%. It is crushing it. And then alongside, and that is a free-to-play BR experience that is easy to monetize and easy to understand from a consumer standpoint and from an investor standpoint, which is becoming more important as these studios get attention and a lot more money coming in from investors. They're launching that against this. And if this ends up being the thing that shuts studio, like if this studio gets shut down, the message that's going to send to people who are pumping money into these publishers and letting everyone who works there keep their jobs and return on investment for all the stock options and stuff like that is studios that make big, like studios that take big, scary risks on projects are not worth it. It's too risky. Let's invest in the people that are just trying to get as much money as they can out of these like lower level experiences. Mm-hmm. Not to say that Apex is like a lower level experience. It came out, it was perfect. There was no beta. Like, it's a fantastic game. Like, the reason it's successful is because the game is great. Mm-hmm. But we know that because we play a lot of games. The average investor, who is important to consider now that everyone's finally realizing that the $130 billion business of gaming is worth $130 billion and not just something your kid's playing in a basement. It starts to matter which company is providing great returns for the people who hold their stock options. When your stock tanks, you lay off 8% of your employees to try and recover it. That is the reason why Blizzard did that. And it sucks shit. And I don't want to see pain inflicted on our industry that we are also passionate about, and developers and families displaced, and, you know, stagnation and creativity because everyone's just chasing profits. So, like, I really sincerely hope that EA sees Anthem through to a point where everyone wants to come back and play it. Because if they don't and it gets Andromeda'd, I think that it's a really bad market signal for the gaming industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Because if this is the year that everyone lays everyone off, it's going to lead every single studio to be more conservative in the types of things they develop. And they're going to want to develop things that are going to go to market and are more or less guaranteed to do well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess
if I was developing like a BR game right now, I would be just in shambles after the launch of like Apex. I'm sorry, this is just in regards to like game development shit.
No, I mean, I think
the right line to take if we're still talking about Anthem, but like in that same vein, man, like holy shit, if I was at a studio that was like, oh yeah, you know, we think we got a next great thing here, and then Apex comes out and you're like, oh, fuck.
Developing a VR game right now sounds terrible. I guess, I mean, yeah, sure. But at the same time, like, I think people discount because we have this rallying mentality behind who's ever winning, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, this game wins, this game's fucking dead. Like, you know, like
Fortnite dead, guys.
Listen, okay. the 10th employee at Google is getting paid more than fucking everybody sitting in on this podcast, and probably everyone that's listening to this. You know, you can develop the 10th most successful BR or the 15th most successful BR and still pull a great return. You don't have to always make the next Fortnite or Anthem in order to build things that are successful.
Yeah.
My worry is that everyone's going to start gunning for that shit because that is a known reality. Oh, I can take the number 5 slot, and then, you know, my company is going to do well over the next year. As opposed to like, let's invest into this new IP and new idea, which is a total crapshoot and could tank out.
Mm-hmm. I guess I hear what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of that. But at the same time, there's this void right now in the looter shooter genre, and
Sure.
I think Anthem adds a lot of uniqueness to that void. And
Sure.
there's a lot of hate going on, and a lot of that same sentiment was going on when Destiny 1 first launched. A lot of the same, like, oh my God, what garbage just landed on my hard drive. I can actually smell it down the street.
It did feel amazing. Like Destiny's guns have always felt amazing.
Yeah.
Totally.
I don't think Anthem's guns feel amazing.
But I guess what I'm saying is when Destiny dropped, there was a void. And there was this thing of like, Borderlands had been out already, and it was missing. And then Anthem is adding this aspect of flying and becoming Iron Man with like Diablo style loot, but it's not point and click Diablo style loot. It's a third person shooter, And then the complement to that is Division coming out. So, but Division is not sci-fi. You're not blowing stuff up with crazy magic. Like it fills an aspect that doesn't exist right now. So I feel like it can carve out this market. And what I'm saying is that I hope that EA sees enough of that so they don't feel like, it's a failed genre and have to pull the plug or something like that. You know what I mean?
I agree. My question is, whenever Big Daddy Gearbox decides to drop Borderlands 3, is it going to just end the conversation about this? Because everybody's taking a shot. I mean, it's obviously not easy to do because Blizzard had Project Titan that was supposed to be an FPS MMO loot-based game, and they dumpstered it and made Overwatch instead, most likely because it was too difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it becomes like, is it possible that when somebody finally hits pay dirt with a game like this and they really land, like they really stick the landing, is it going to be like a Fortnite thing where everyone floods to it because they're like, oh my God, finally? Because it's sort of like a reverse situation of what's happening with BRs, right? There was only a few BRs out. Not a lot of people had kind of made them. And then Fortnite came out, it blew up, and now everyone's making a BR. Mm-hmm. Whereas over the past 6 years, we've seen every studio take a shot at making a loot and shooting game, whether it's FPS or third person or whatever. And nobody has particularly nailed it yet.
It's a much more expensive thing to
It's a way more expensive investment too. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, all the assets and all that. Like it's
a lot easier to dev out a superb map and nail some shooting mechanics and put together, some great characters and abilities, as opposed to crafting a story, crafting tiers of loot, crafting different varieties of stuff. Like, I mean, there's fundamentally less moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Like, I hate being so uncertain. I remember when Destiny came out, I was really confident that like they're going to nail this. And maybe it's the cynic in me from getting punched in the face over like things being not quite perfect over and over and over again. But I'm worried that I think Anthem is going to find an incredibly strong base of support for the people who play the game and they're like, this is absolutely my shit. I guess I'm speaking from the point of like, I really hope that Anthem was going to be the delivery on the concept that I have been wanting to play for the past, 6 years.
Yeah, I feel you.
For me, it a way it is because they focus so much on PvE and left out the PvP. It allows them to do just batshit crazy stuff with weapons and builds that will never be possible in Destiny. And like to me, that's really exciting. Like the stuff that I'm only experimenting with stuff because I got like these half-formed builds because I don't have all the masterworks yet. But as I get all the masterworks and as they start to do DLCs, they see what works and doesn't work, and they experiment more. Like I'm really looking forward to this journey. Like really looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, same. I guess that's how I'm approaching it. It's just like with Monster Hunter World for me. It's like it was great to jump in. It was great to make builds. And if that's the time that I had with it, then cool. I had a great ride. But if they do deliver on content to add into the game, like we got these cataclysms coming and they got things that are slated, and if they can do that successfully and have these cosmetics and stuff to chase after, like the problems that you have right now, Broman, with the Endgame, if they can at least answer part of that relatively soon, then it's going to be good. But if they pull a Bungie and take a year to fix some of that stuff, then no.
If they manage to deliver on a lot of this, sorry to interrupt, but
No,
if they manage to deliver on all this stuff inside of 2 weeks or a month, they still have control over the narrative, right? But if they start taking too long, they have a very small window before Division comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone goes, well, and moves on.
That's true.
Because Division 2 is Division 1.8.
Yeah. At launch.
You know, kind of repackaged, and there's new stuff, but it's that at launch. And if it's not plagued by all the problems Division 1 had when it launches, it's going to capture everyone who was willing to give Division 1 blew the fuck up on Twitch until the hacking became so rampant that no one could play it anymore. And if the Division 2 blows up the same way and captures that audience and doesn't let it go, it changes the narrative for them. And then they have to start marketing against that instead of owning their landing.
Mm-hmm.